Josh Silverman, que viene ahora, junto con Guy Bertenglevien, que es otro de los fundadores de Globant y miembro del board de Endeavor. Josh fue el CEO de Skype del 2008 al 2010. Ahora es el presidente de Servicios de Consumo en Estados Unidos para American Express. Pero bueno, él viene de liderar una de las grandes compañías del mundo de la tecnología, con lo cual creemos que va a ser súper interesante. Y el formato va a ser una entrevista. Va a ser 20 minutos, pero va a ser un formato de entrevista, no de presentación. Así podemos escuchar de Josh de manera directa. Va a ser en inglés, con lo cual los que quieren ponerse los auriculares lo pueden hacer. Adelante. Avanti.
Gracias.
Él no es Josh, él es Josh. ¿Está bien? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming and welcome to Buenos Aires. You know, Endeavor has given me a lot of opportunities to get to know interesting entrepreneurs. But when I met you, I was surprised to find an entrepreneur who has become also an executive and also executive of growing and companies, and I will always been surprised with, you know, this change from being an entrepreneur to being an executive. How do you do that? What changes it takes?
Well, first, I'm delighted to be here. And we met first at an Endeavor event in London. I'm a big fan of Endeavor, and so it's great to be able to be part of this. I started my career actually working for a senator because I thought that that would be the best place to create change. I wanted to be part of creating positive change. And I decided that at least for me, I could do more in the private sector. So I became an entrepreneur and I founded a company called Evite, which has a very unfortunate translation in Spanish, I guess. But in the US, it's a very popular way to invite people to events. Built that company and then sold it, and then came to eBay. And I never intended to be a big company person. I've always thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I was very fortunate at eBay to have a chance to run some very independent, standalone businesses where you know, I could be an entrepreneur within a larger organization where I effectively had one shareholder, eBay, and ran a progressively larger businesses up to Skype. And I think that the skills can be similar. What I think is so special about being an entrepreneur is, I mean, I think there's a couple of things that are more state of mind than anything. One is an incredibly high sense of ownership. So one of the standards I always hold myself to is, if I owned the entire company, what would I do? And always making sure that that is what I do, regardless of whether the company is private or public. And the second thing that I think is so wonderful about entrepreneurship is a very high sense of urgency, often caused by the fact that you have 3 months of cash left in the bank. And so you don't have time to mess around. It's an incredibly clarifying thought process of, I need to survive, I have this much money, what are the most value-creating things I can do in the next 3 months in order to get through to the next round. And again, that's a wonderful learning I've taken from entrepreneurship and try to carry with me every day at American Express, at Skype, and throughout life. So I think they're wonderful learnings that you get as an entrepreneur.
So let's start with your first venture, you know, with Evite. You started Evite at the days of the dot-com boom.
Yeah.
And you know, how did you handle the ups and downs of the business? How was it to run it?
It was amazing. So we founded Evite in late 1998, and one of the things that's special about entrepreneurship is that the highs are much higher and the lows are much lower than when you're an employee working for someone else. It's hard for anyone who hasn't been an entrepreneur to understand how high and how low they can be. And at Evite, you know, I certainly had my share of both. At first, when I quit my very respectable job to begin writing a business plan and start raising money for something, it was much scarier than I think I would have even guessed. And then, you know, the internet boom started to happen, and we became a poster child for success, and all of a sudden it was a tremendous high. And I'm getting features in newspapers and magazines and television and sort of a little celebrity within Silicon Valley. And then the internet crashes. And all of a sudden I'm laying off 60% of my staff. And these are people who I think of as family, who I've hired, who I've said, quit your job and come follow my journey, follow my vision. And we're desperately trying to make payroll, and we're trying, the things that happen. So incredible learnings. I guess I would say that one of the things that was very clarifying for me in hindsight, and you learn so much in hindsight after you've had a little time, is the because of versus the in spite of. So when things are going very, very well, you have a tendency to, I've learned at least, many people have a tendency to have a success bias. They presume that they are successful because of all the things that they've been doing. And it turns out that you've been successful because of some of the things you've been doing and successful in spite of some of the things you've been doing. And the art is to tell the difference. And it's often hard to tell the difference until the crash comes. And that's very, very clarifying. It's suddenly all the things I thought I couldn't live without, activities happening in my company, employees that I was sure I couldn't live without when we were growing. When the crash happened, I discovered I could stop those activities. We could lay off some of these people and, in fact, continue to thrive. So it was tremendous learning. And as I've now been professional management coming in to take over from very successful entrepreneurs, I think that's part of the value, part of what I've tried to look for is where are things that have been sacred cows, things that the company has decided are fundamental to their success, and really questioning some of those, because very often I find that the greatest value to unlock is hiding under a sacred cow.
Good. So you would argue that you have a lot of learning to take advantage of crisis. Something that as Argentinians we are specialists on that.
Yes. So, one of my favorite sayings from one of my least favorite politicians is never waste a good crisis. And I do think that is a wonderful learning that I've tried very much to take to heart. In the midst of crisis, a lot of great things can come, as bad as it feels. I'm sure many of you in the room have had some pretty awful times. I've certainly had my share, and many of my greatest moments have come from coming through those. But another learning that I've taken from that is, when going through a crisis and having to take really drastic action, you always come out of it with feeling, well, in the times I have, feeling like, gosh, why didn't I do a lot of that stuff sooner? We really should have been cutting back on those activities and stopping these expenditures and refocusing on this and challenging that when things were growing. And so it is an exercise I go through in my head, not constantly, but maybe every 2 years with the business, is to imagine if we were in crisis, if I suddenly had to cut 40% of my cost structure, for example, what would I do differently? If I suddenly had competition, what would I challenge in my business model or my product if I had unexpected competition? And are some of those things that I should be doing today anyway?
Well, it looks you have a lot of suitability to become a CEO, and after Evite you became a CEO. How it is to, what makes a good founder to be a CEO, and how do you become a good CEO?
I do think they're different. I have tremendous respect for founder, and I think that the founder has an entitled place in a company that shouldn't be squandered. You can't fire the founder, and what I mean by that is you can fire a founder and they won't work for the company anymore if you've taken venture capital. Maybe you've been lucky enough to bootstrap your company and own more than 50%, in which case you truly can't be fired. But the founder is the founder and will always be the founder. And I have found that founders have a special understanding of what the brand is. Founders have a special understanding of the culture and the mission, and that is very difficult to replace. It's also true that founders are unusually empowered because smart boards hate to fire founders. So they can take bigger risks, they can be more counterintuitive. A CEO is an employee. A CEO reports to a board, and therefore has, in many ways, less degrees of freedom than a founder. What I think an outside CEO hopefully brings is real outside perspective to challenge the way that some of the things in the company have happened. Hopefully a very good bar of excellence for what best in world truly looks like. I've talked to a great many founders who look me in the eye and tell me that they have the very best CFO in the world and the very best CTO in the world, but it's the only CFO and CTO they've ever met. So, having that external benchmarking, I do think can add a lot of value. And I think there's a role for each. And I hope that in some ways, to the extent that I've been successful coming in as professional management, in part it may be because I have so much empathy, having been a founder, having a lot of empathy for the special place that the early team plays.
You took Skype from being a company that was valued at $2 billion. In just 2 years, you converted it into a company of $8.5 billion, which was later sold to Microsoft. What tips can you share with all this entrepreneur community, to scale up?
So first, I'd start by saying it was a tremendous team effort, and there were a lot of incredibly talented employees at Skype who played a huge role. I was one of those employees in value creation. I think the job of the CEO is to provide clarity of vision, so everybody's rowing in the same direction, and to remove as many obstacles as possible from the team so that they can do their job well. So when I came into Skype, what I observed was we did not have clarity of mission. And a company that's been very, very successful in its first act faces an overwhelming tyranny of choice in terms of the number of directions that it can go. And that can actually be very harmful. So one of the things I think we did very well was decide that, that video should be the next core of our brand. And so in early 2008, when I arrived, Skype was still very much viewed as a cheap telephone, cheap telephone calls. And we said we believe that there is an unclaimed opportunity in video calling. The video calling's time has come, and we launched a whole new set of products built around video calling, made that the center of our brand platform. And I think that the clarity of purpose to say that video calling is important was key. And when thinking about where you want to go in strategic vision, I think getting to the essence of what the brand should be about is core. At Skype, when going out and talking with Skype users, it was such a privilege to work for Skype because it touches so many people in a very powerful way. But I'd hear story after story, people coming and talking to me in tears about what Skype had meant to them. The ability to keep in touch with their spouse for a year while their spouse was out of the country, or their father who was serving in Iraq, or story after story. And what we realized was that the essence of Skype was about being together when you can't be in the same room. And it was that fundamental realization that it's really about being together that made us say, well, that's more than just a phone call. It's more than just audio. Video then becomes central for that. And what else could we do? Could we have a grandmother go shopping for a present for her grandchild on Amazon while not in the same room? Could a husband and wife watch a TV show together while not in the same city? So many experiences that can be shared while not in the same place, and we believe that that's really powerful. So getting to that fundamental insight, it's about being together when you can't be in the same room, and the next important step is video, I think was very important. The second thing was how we operate. There just wasn't clear enough accountability about who owns what and how to get things done. And I think we made great progress in 2.5 years. I think we still had more progress to go, and that's something that will, in any company that's scaling fast, will always be a challenge. But I would say for entrepreneurs scaling things fast, that's the first thing that usually new management has to fix, is the way the code is architected and the way the organizational structure is designed, and that it's pretty easy to start building job descriptions around personalities. Mary is good at this, but she also wants to do that, and we'll give her a little bit of this. And before you know it, it's really hard to tell who owns what. So if there's one thing I'd coach you on as you're scaling, the more you can focus on making sure that there's what I talk with my team about sticker on forehead. Who's got the sticker on forehead? Who owns this? And is our organization designed for clarity around that? Is our code architected for clarity around that? And our processes designed to allow for that? The more that you can drive individual accountability, the more entrepreneurial your company is going to feel, no matter what size it is.
I remember a story that you told me about, a very particular vision about how important it is to be a leader and what it means to be a leader within your office space. Can you share a little bit of that?
Yeah. So early days of Evite, my secretary came to me and she said, everyone is sure that the company is for sale. And I said, well, why do they think that? And she said, well, you turned your chair. Your desk used to face this way, and now it faces that way. And so it used to be that as we walked by your desk on our way to the front door, we could all see what was on your computer monitor, and now we can't. So it must be that you're trying to hide something, and if you're trying to hide something, it's probably that you're selling the company. And it turned out that my lead database engineer was a 50-something-year-old Chinese man, a very traditional Chinese man who believed in Feng Shui. And he was quite literally losing sleep because the CEO had his back to the door every day, and it was an easy thing for me to fix to make this man's life better. But everyone had read so much, and it was a great lesson for me that when you are the leader, people look at everything you do. They look at whether you're smiling, they look at where you're spending your time, they look at your body language. And it's so important that you recognize that you project confidence, that you, the larger the organization, but as a leader, I don't feel like I have the privilege to have a bad day. I may be tired, maybe I fought with my wife the day before, whatever, but when I'm in, my team needs me and they need me to be able to do my job. So there's a lot of wonderful things about leading an organization. I think of this as one of the important responsibilities.
Skype is one of a few products that have been started outside the US that have become a global success. Here we surely have a number of entrepreneurs pursuing, a new product from Argentina. What tips can you share about how to create a global product?
Yeah. So I have tremendous heart for building new ecosystems outside of Silicon Valley that can create great success. And that's one of the reasons why I love Endeavor so much. And I don't have time to invest with very many nonprofits, and Endeavor is one of the few that I really invest in because I think it plays such an important role. What I've seen in my 2 tours now building companies outside of the US is that it's not particularly hard to find 20 or 30 really smart, talented, ambitious people in the Netherlands or London or Buenos Aires or Tallinn, Estonia. What's hard is when a company is growing fast and you're going from, let's say, 100 people to 500 people to 1,000 people, as you've had to do. Finding experienced management who knows how to scale something that's growing very, very fast and who's done it at least once before, that's typically where I've found the biggest talent gap. You can go to the really big established companies which typically don't have the experience and the culture that works with small, fast-growing companies, or you can try to learn as you go and you're going to make more mistakes than you'd like. So finding a way to really build a community of people who have done this before and share learnings is really key. One of the things that Silicon Valley has had the benefit of is several really foundational companies. If you think about the ecosystem, Hewlett-Packard was this foundational company which as it grew, created all of these entrepreneurs who spun out and created a generation of companies. Google did that. Many of the early Facebook employees were actually Google alumni. PayPal has done that. Many wonderful companies have come from PayPal. And it's that kind of ecosystem that many other locations lack. So, I mean, one of the wonderful things that Globant is doing for Argentina, and I think about Mercado Libre, and you've had a couple of really great successes here where you really have built some companies and trained the next generation of leadership, and I think that's going to be a wonderful asset. I think that's also a role that Endeavor can play in forming that networking and community so you can each support each other.
We talk about the difference in culture between a small company and a larger company, and by moving from eBay, which was, it's a company with a passion to break the status quo, to go after the telecom companies and destroy it. I had the chance through Endeavor to meet Tim Draper, who was an early investor, and when he mentioned how he got into Niklas to make the first investment, he said, I like to find these teams who are passionate about changing something that's going to be, transforming the world. You have come from this kind of company to a company like Amex, where it's a very good established player, and I'm sure that while we keep you here on a stage, there are plenty of entrepreneurs trying to steal part of your lunch. What has been your business.
Take food out of my children's mouths.
Yeah. So how do you foster innovation within your company? How do you say, okay, let's take care of our bags?
So let me a couple thoughts on that. I have always looked for times of great disruption, things that are broken where it seems like it's hard to fix, but if you can, you will cover yourself and your team will cover itself in glory. I think that's a wonderful place to be. And so when I left Skype and was looking back, I had such a wonderful experience at Skype. What it was I so cherished, it was an industry that was in complete disruption, where with a brand that touched so many people in such a positive way, and that was positioned to lead, not follow. And so that was the low bar I set for my next opportunity, was what's the next big industry that I think is in the midst of total disruption with a fabulous brand and a chance to lead, not follow. And I think American Express really meets all three of those criteria beautifully. Many people may not know American Express is 162 years old, and it has reinvented itself 3 times in the past. It began actually as a horse and buggy company that would take your belongings and drive them out west in the United States, and you had to trust that it would that the goods would arrive. It then became a travel company when things like airlines and railroads were invented, and then became a traveler's check company, and then became a credit card company. So it's got a history of reinvention, and I think the opportunity to be part of reinventing that for the 4th time is very exciting. I also think payments is an incredibly exciting time, because we're looking at the disruption of that industry as it goes from being payments to being commerce. So I do believe that the next generation of leaders will emerge 10 years from now, and it may not look like the prior generation, but I think we're pretty well positioned to win. I think that in order for a big company to succeed, I think of a startup as a powerboat, a speedboat riding in an open ocean. And what you have is a lot of agility to react very, very quickly to changing conditions and try to find just the right path to navigate. When you're a big company, you're the moon, creating the gravitational pull that is creating the tides. And we've got to find a way to use our size to our advantage, and I think we do have quite a lot of advantages in that, and then organize ourselves against the critical few things, and it's always about picking the very, very few. In a world of tons of noise, NFC is doing this, and Google's doing that, and PayPal's doing this, and in a world full of noise, how do you pick up the couple of things that really matter for customers? Focus like crazy on doing those things incredibly well, and ignore everything else.
Good. Josh, I would like to thank you a lot for coming here and sharing this tremendous story about, personal reinvention. I believe that we are here to learn a lot about how you can grow your company, but you have shared with us not only how we can do it, but also how you can, as a person, have a journey of continuous reinvention, and I would like to thank you for that.
Thank you. And for all of you in the room, I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, you're a leader. You're leading your team. You're convincing the press to follow you. You're trying to convince the government to get the policies you need. You're playing an incredibly important role in Argentina. And I think it's fabulous what you're all doing and aspiring to do, and I wish you all the very best of luck.
Thank you very much.